question hit Amara deeply. For the first time, she spoke without pretending. "I just wanted everyone to be happy for me," she said quietly. Zainab nodded slowly. "Happiness forced by money," she said, "is not loyalty." On the wedding day, the bridal train was smaller than planned. There was no extra noise, no unnecessary drama, but the absence was loud. Tola sat quietly among the guests, far from the spotlight. When Amara noticed her, their eyes met. Amara smiled. Bisola stood in line, looking beautiful, but empty. Cami smiled confidently for the cameras. Still, something was missing. After the wedding, when everything settled down, Amara sent one final message. "Thank you to those who stayed with love, not obligation." Some people replied. Some people read it and stayed silent. And some friendships ended quietly. No noise, no closure. Because sometimes the real test isn't marriage, it's friendship. And even after the wedding ended, the silence that followed was louder than the music from that day. Life returned to normal slowly. Pictures were posted, comments were liked, but something had shifted beneath the surface. Amara noticed it in the quiet moments, when the house felt too still, when she reached for her phone and didn't know who to call. Some names no longer felt safe to dial. She realized that weddings don't only reveal love, they reveal people. Tola went back to her routine, work, home, trying to rebuild the confidence she lost along the way. Some days were harder than others, but slowly she began to breathe again. She learned that walking away doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes it means survival. Bisola also kept her distance, not because anyone pushed her away, but because envy is heavy along the way, and carrying it for too long becomes exhausting. Days were harder than others, busy, but always organizing. She began to breathe again, always in control. She learned that walking away doesn't always mean failure, as a way of leaving people alone. Survival. Weeks later, also one evening, kept her distance. Amara finally sent a message to Tola. No long explanation, no defense, just honesty. "I'm sorry I didn't speak when I should have," she wrote. "I hope you're okay." Tola stared at the message for a long time. Then she replied. "I'm healing," she said. "That's enough for now." And in that moment, Amara understood something clearly. Friendship doesn't need big gestures. It needs courage at the right time. Not everyone came back. Not every bond was repaired.
When
but the
Amara
ones that
finally
remained
announced her
were
wedding
real.
date, everything
And
around
that
her
was
changed
enough.
almost immediately.
Because in the
It was like one small message shifted the whole atmosphere. The group chat exploded with messages. Phones started buzzing non-stop. Calls were coming in back
she
to
learned
back.
that walking away
Everybody
doesn't
was
always
excited.
mean failure, as a way of leaving people alone. Survival. Weeks later,
also
one
kept
evening,
her distance.
Amara finally sent
Everybody
one
was
message to
genuinely
Tola.
happy for
No
her.
long
At
explanation,
least,
no
that was
defense,
how it looked on
just
the surface.
honesty.
They
"I'm
all
sorry
said
I
it was
didn't
an
speak
honor
when
to
I should
stand
have,"
by her
she wrote.
side as her
"I
bridal
hope
train,
you're okay."
to be part of her big
Tola
day.
stared at the message
Matching
for a long
dresses,
time.
fine
Then
makeup,
she replied,
beautiful pictures,
"I'm healing,"
memories
she
that
said.
would last a lifetime.
"That's enough for now."
Everybody
And
talked about how beautiful it would be. Nobody talked about how heavy it would become. Nobody
Honor when I
talked
should
about
have,
by her
she wrote.
side as her
"I
bridal
hope you're
those
okay."
happy messages. To be part of her big
Tola
day. Nobody
stared at the
mentioned
message
matching
for a long
dresses.
time.
Nobody
Then
mentioned
she
the
replied,
expectations.
"I'm
Pictures.
healing."
Because when
Memories, she said.
happiness
"Last
is a
fresh. That's
lifetime,
enough for
people
now.
don't like to talk about responsibility. At least, not yet. It started with small, harmless conversations. Nothing serious, just normal planning. Which Aşewebi color would look best? Who would handle makeup? Where everyone would stay before the wedding it would be. Just small talk. Nobody talked about how heavy it would become. Cami, the chief bridesmaid,
Nobody
naturally
stand
by her side. Nobody asked her
you're
those
okay.
happy messages. To be part of her
Ladies
big
and
day.
guys,
Nobody
our
mentioned
strengths
the
are
hers.
equal.
Nobody
Together, we
mentioned
will
the
succeed.
expectations.
Absolutely.
Like someone who
Because
already
when
had
happiness
everything
lasts
figured
forever.
out.
For
People
now.
don't like
Everything
to talk
must
about
be
responsibility, she said. This wedding has to be loud. People must It started with small, harmless conversations. People smiled. Nothing serious. Some people even agreed loudly. Which Aşewebi color would look best? Who would handle makeup too, but where everyone would stay before the wedding was quiet. Just small talk. Nobody talked about how she kept quiet about the fact that her rent was overdue. Nobody naturally. She didn't talk about how her salary was delayed again. She didn't mention Nobody mentioned. She just told herself, I go manage. Somehow. Because sometimes saying you're struggling feels more difficult than struggling itself. Bisola also smiled, but hers didn't reach her eyes. She listened more than she spoke, watching everything. When Amara finally announced her wedding date, everything around her changed almost immediately. It was like one small message shifted the whole atmosphere. The group chat exploded with messages. Phones started buzzing non-stop. Calls were coming in back to back. Everybody was excited. Everybody was congratulating her. Everybody was genuinely happy for her. At least, that was how it looked on the surface. They all said it was an honor to stand by her side as her bridal train, to be part of her big day. Matching dresses, fine makeup, beautiful pictures, memories that would last a lifetime. Everybody talked about how beautiful it would be.
I'm healing.
Memories that talked about how life
That's enough for now.
would become. Everybody talked about the pressure that followed after those happy messages. It would become. Nobody mentioned the cost. Nobody mentioned the expectations.
I hope you're okay.
Because when happiness is dead, nobody mentioned. People don't like to talk about responsibility. At least, not yet. It started with small, harmless conversations. Nothing serious, just normal planning. Which Aşewebi color would look best? Who would handle makeup? Where everyone would stay before the wedding? Just small talk. Or so it seemed. Cami, the chief bridesmaid, naturally took charge. Nobody asked her to. She just stepped into the role like it was already hers.
Together, we
She
will
spoke
succeed.
with confidence, like someone who already had everything figured out. Everything must be perfect, she said. This wedding has to be loud. People must feel it. People nodded. People smiled. Some people even agreed loudly. But not everybody felt comfortable. Tola smiled too, but she didn't talk much. Her smile was quiet, careful. She kept quiet about the fact that her rent was overdue. She didn't talk about how her salary had delayed again. She didn't mention how tight things were for her at that moment. She just told herself, I go manage. Somehow. Because sometimes saying you're struggling feels more difficult than struggling itself. Bisola also smiled, but hers didn't reach her eyes. She listened more than she spoke, watching everything quietly from the side, taking note of every reaction. As the days passed, the bills started rolling in, slowly at first, then more frequently. First, it was the custom dress payment, then makeup deposits, then bridal shower contributions. Every week there was something new to pay for, every week another reminder. The excitement slowly turned into pressure, heavy pressure. Tola would stare at her phone for a long time before replying to messages. Sometimes she would calculate and recalculate, hoping somehow the numbers would change. Sometimes she would type a reply, then delete it. Sometimes she would just sigh, lock her phone, and sit quietly with the weight of it all, until she could no longer keep quiet. When she finally gathered the courage to speak, her voice wasn't steady. "Please, can we reduce some of these things? Maybe we don't need everything." For a moment, everywhere went quiet. Not the normal quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your chest tight. Kemi laughed softly, like it was nothing serious. "If you can't afford it," she said, "maybe being on the bridal train isn't for you." The words landed heavy. Nobody laughed with her. Nobody defended Tola either. Amara stayed silent. She read the messages. She saw everything, but she said nothing. And sometimes silence hurts more than insult. Bisola watched the exchange quietly. Amara used to be the shy one, the one people barely noticed. Now everybody admired her ring, her man, her glow. At night, Bisola scrolled through old pictures on her phone. Pictures from years ago, dreams she once had. Under her breath, she whispered softly, "It was supposed to be me." From that moment, something shifted. The bridal train group chat slowly changed its tone. Messages became shorter, sharper. Voice notes sounded playful, but the meaning inside them was heavy. Zainab tried to calm things down. She tried to remind everyone why they were there. "Let's remember why we're here," she said. "This wedding is about love, not competition." But when pride becomes loud, love struggles to survive. 3 days before the wedding, everything finally fell apart. Tola sent a long message explaining that she could no longer continue. As she typed, tears dropped on her phone screen. Her hands were shaking. She felt ashamed, like she had failed. Almost immediately, Kemi removed her from the group chat. No discussion, no conversation. Just like that, she was gone. Amara stared at her phone for a long time. She typed a message, then deleted it. She typed again, then deleted it again. That night, she cried alone, wondering how something that started with joy turned into pain. When Zainab confronted her the next day, there was no anger in her voice, only honesty. "Do you want real friends?" she asked, "or do you just want a perfect show?" The question hit Amara deeply. For the first time, she spoke without pretending. "I just wanted everyone to be happy for me," she said quietly. Zainab nodded slowly. "Happiness forced by money," she said, "is not loyalty." On the wedding day, the bridal train was smaller than planned. There was no extra noise, no unnecessary drama, but the absence was loud. Tola sat quietly among the guests, far from the spotlight. When Amara noticed her, their eyes met. Amara smiled. Bisola stood in line, looking beautiful, but empty. Kemi smiled confidently for the cameras. Still, something was missing. After the wedding, when everything settled down, Amara sent one final message. "Thank you to those who stayed with love, not obligation." Some people replied. Some people read it and stayed silent. And some friendships ended quietly. No noise, no closure. Because sometimes the real test isn't marriage, it's friendship. And even after the wedding ended, the silence that followed was louder than the music from that day. Life returned to normal slowly. Pictures were posted,
Comments were liked, but something had shifted beneath the surface. Amara noticed it in the quiet moments, when the house felt too still, when she reached for her phone and didn't know who to call. Some names no longer felt safe to dial. She realized that weddings don't only reveal love, they reveal people. Tola went back to her routine, work, home, trying to rebuild the confidence she lost along the way. Some days were harder than others, but slowly she began to breathe again. She learned that walking away doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes it means survival. Bisola also kept her distance, not because anyone pushed her away, but because envy is heavy, and carrying it for too long becomes exhausting. Kemi stayed busy, always organizing something, always in control. But control, without compassion, has a way of leaving people alone. Weeks later, one evening, Amara finally sent a message to Tola. No long explanation, no defense, just honesty. "I'm sorry I didn't speak when I should have," she wrote. "I hope you're okay." Tola stared at the message for a long time. Then she replied. "I'm healing," she said. "That's enough for now." And in that moment, Amara understood something clearly. Friendship doesn't need big gestures. It needs courage at the right time. Not everyone came back. Not every bond was repaired. But the ones that remained were real. And that was enough. Because in the end, the wedding lasted one day. But the lessons last a lifetime.
If this story touched you, subscribe to more real life Nigerian story like this. Share and comment. Thank you for watching.
You know what nobody tells you about betrayal? It doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like a season change. Slow, quiet. And by the time you feel the cold, you've already been standing in it for months. Irene was about to discover that. It wasn't what David said that worried her. It was the half-second pause before he said it. "I've just had a lot on my mind," he replied when she asked why things felt different. Irene didn't push. She was good at that, reading the room, giving space, trusting people. That quality had always been a strength. She didn't know yet that someone had been studying it like a weakness. The truth rarely announces itself. It slips out between the salad and the main course. Sunday lunch, the whole family present. Her mother reached for the bread and said almost to herself, "Zara and David always have so much to talk about. They have the same energy, don't they?" Nobody responded. Irene looked at Zara. Zara was already looking at David. Not like a sister-in-law, like someone taking inventory of something she wanted. Irene picked up her fork and said nothing, but something inside her went very, very still. Some truths you search for. Others find you while you're just standing in a kitchen making tea. David's phone buzzed on the counter. She wasn't looking for anything. She wasn't suspicious. She was just there. Zara's name popped up. "I feel like I understand you in a way she never will." Is that strange to say? Irene read it once. Then she set down her mug. walked to the window and stood very still for a long time. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just understood with complete devastating clarity that this had been going on longer than one message.
Even the strongest people have a moment they don't show anyone. That night, after David fell asleep, Irene sat on the bathroom floor, not sobbing, just still. She thought about every family gathering she had invited Zara to. Every time she had said, "You love her, she's my favorite person." Every door she had opened proud. She thought, did I do this? Did I hand her the key? She sat with that question for a long time. Then she stood up, washed her face, and looked in the mirror. No, she had loved her sister well. What happened next was never her fault to carry. The most disarming thing you can do to someone who expects a fight is offer them silence. Zara came over 3 days later. "You've been distant," she said. Concerned eyes, soft voice. A perfect performance. Irene studied her, really studied her. The way you look at a painting, when you finally understand, it wasn't made for beauty. It was made to deceive. "I'm okay," Irene said. She smiled. And Zara, who had prepared for an argument, didn't know what to do with a smile. That was the moment the power shifted. A man who doesn't know he's been manipulated will defend the manipulation. "I don't know what you want from me," David said. "I want you to think," Irene replied quietly, "about whose voice has been loudest in your head lately, and why." He opened his mouth, closed it. "Zara just..." "I know what Zara did," Irene said. Not angry, not bitter, just certain. And that certainty unsettled him more than any argument could have. Patience is unbearable to someone who was counting on your panic. Zara pushed harder when she sensed she was losing ground. "If things don't work out with Irene," she said to David one evening, voice soft and practiced, "I just think you deserve someone who really gets you." David looked at her, really looked. "Someone like who?" he asked. Zara smiled, too quickly. And in that half second, in that smile that arrived before the innocence could, David felt something shift in his chest. Not love, not comfort, recognition. He had been played. The most honest conversations happen when people run out of performance. "I've always been the second one," Zara finally broke. "She gets the respect, the stability, the love. And I get, 'Oh, you must be Irene's sister.'" Her voice cracked. And for a moment, just a moment, Irene almost felt sorry for her. Because underneath the manipulation was something real. Real pain, real envy, real loneliness. But real wounds don't give you the right to become someone else's wound. "I know you're hurting," Irene said quietly. "But you didn't come for healing. You came for my life." Zara had no answer, because it was true. The most powerful decision doesn't come with raised voices. It comes with a closed door. David stood outside her apartment. "I should have seen it sooner," he said. "Yes," Irene agreed. "Simple, no cruelty. I let someone make me doubt you without giving you the chance to defend yourself. You did." He waited for more, for warmth, for reassurance. "I love you," he said. "Tell me how to fix this." Irene looked at him for a long time. "I believe you love me," she said finally. "But love isn't enough if trust is a door you leave unlocked for anyone who knocks." She stepped back. "I need to know you can guard what's ours. Not because I asked, because you understand why it matters." She didn't slam the door. She closed it gently. And somehow, that was worse. She didn't win because she fought. She won because she refused to become what they expected. They expected rage. They expected desperation. They expected her to beg, to shrink, to compete. Instead, Irene made herself tea,
opened a book, and let the silence of her own apartment settle around her like something earned. She wasn't okay yet. She knew that, but she was whole. And whole is harder to break than happy. The woman they underestimated wasn't bitter. She was just finally done being easy to underestimate. But here's what nobody saw coming. David came back. But Irene had stopped thinking about David because she just discovered something that changed everything. Part 3 drops soon. Comment your country below. I want to see where this story is reaching. Follow me on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube, Us22 Studio. Because the next chapter isn't about a man. It's about a woman finally learning who she really is. Some discoveries don't happen dramatically. They happen quietly, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. Irene was clearing out old boxes when she found it. A folded envelope tucked inside a Bible she had never seen opened. Her name, written in handwriting that wasn't her mother's. Inside, a birth certificate. She read it once, then again. The mother's name listed wasn't the woman who raised her. Irene sat on the floor for a very long time, not crying, just trying to remember how to breathe. The hardest person to confront is the one who tucked you in at night. She sat across from her mother at the kitchen table. Same woman, same hands, same voice that had called her name 1,000 times. But now, Irene was seeing her differently. Like a photograph slightly out of focus. "Are you okay?" her mother asked. "Just tired," Irene replied. She folded her hands in her lap to stop them from shaking. She wasn't ready yet, but the question was already burning through everything. The cruelest secrets are the ones kept by the people closest to you. Irene went to Zara. Not with anger, with exhaustion. "Did you know?" she asked simply. Zara went very still. And that stillness was its own answer. "How long?" Irene whispered. Zara looked at the floor. "Mom told me when I was 17. She made me promise." 17. Irene repeated the word slowly. All those years, all those dinners, all those moments Zara had smiled at her across the table while carrying this. "Is that why?" Irene asked quietly. "Is that why you always felt like I didn't deserve what I had?" Zara's eyes filled. She didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. The truth has a way of arriving from every direction at once. Irene was sitting alone when David called. She almost didn't answer. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I should have told you sooner." Her chest tightened. "Your aunt, your mother's sister, she contacted me 2 months ago. She said you deserved to know the truth about where you came from. I told her it wasn't my place." Silence. "I thought I was protecting you," he said quietly. "I was wrong. I made the same mistake I made with Zara. I listened to someone else decide what you could handle." Irene closed her eyes. The man she loved had known, not out of cruelty, out of fear, which somehow made it both easier and harder to hold. "I'm not angry," she said finally. "You should be," he replied. "I know," she said, "but I'm too tired." Some conversations change the shape of your entire life. Irene sat her mother down. No raised voice, no accusations. Just the birth certificate placed quietly on the table between them. Her mother looked at it for a long time. Then she looked up, And for the first time in Irene's life, she saw something unfamiliar in that face. Not a stranger, something more complicated than that. A woman who had made a choice decades ago and had spent every day since then loving her way through the consequences. I was going to tell you, she began. When? Irene asked. Her mother had no answer. I don't hate you, Irene said slowly. I want you to know that. But I need to understand who I am. And I can't do that if you keep deciding what I'm allowed to know about myself. Her mother reached for her hand. Irene let her take it, but she didn't squeeze back. Not yet.
She wasn't looking for a replacement. She was looking for the missing piece of herself. The name on the birth certificate was Grace. That was all she had. A name, a city, a date. Irene sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open and her tea going cold. She wasn't afraid. She had already survived finding out that her whole story was different than she thought. What was one more truth? She typed the name slowly and pressed search.
Some moments you prepare for your entire life without knowing it. It took 3 weeks. A mutual contact. A phone call. A voice on the other end that went silent when Irene said her name. Then, I wondered if this day would ever come. Irene gripped the phone. The voice was soft, slightly unsteady, like someone trying to hold themselves together. I never stopped thinking about you, the woman said, not once. Irene had prepared a list of questions, practiced them, ordered them. Every single one of them disappeared. Instead, she said the only thing that was true. I just needed to know I existed to someone before I became who I am. The woman on the other end began to cry. And for the first time in weeks, so did Irene.
She went looking for her mother. What she found was herself. Irene walked home slowly that evening. The sky was doing something quiet and orange above the rooftops. She thought about her mother, the one who raised her, the one whose hands had braided her hair and whose voice had told her she was loved on every hard day. She thought about Grace, the one whose absence had always been a shape she couldn't name. She thought about Zara, broken in ways that had nothing to do with Irene, but had cost Irene everything. She thought about David, who was learning, slowly, how to stop making decisions on her behalf. And she thought about herself, who she had been before all of this, who she was now. She wasn't the girl who needed everyone to tell her she was enough. She had walked through the fire of her own story and come out the other side, not unburnt, but clear. And clarity, she realized, is the most expensive thing a person can earn. She got home, made tea, sat in the quiet, and for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt like hers.
But Grace had something else to tell her. Something that explained why the secret was kept so long. Something that involves a name Irene has had her whole life. And when she hears the full truth, everything she thought she had healed from will crack open again.
Part 4 is coming. Comment your country. Follow Us22 Studio because this story is just only the beginning.
Every story has a moment where you realize you were never searching for answers. You were searching for permission. Permission to stop carrying what was never yours. Permission to finally put it all down. Irene was about to get that permission, but it would cost her one last thing. The second conversation is always harder than the first. The first time you speak to someone you've missed your whole life, emotion carries you. The second time, reality shows up. Grace called on a Tuesday morning. Her voice was steadier this time, prepared. "There's something I didn't tell you," she said. "Something I should have said the moment you found me." Irene sat down slowly. "I have a son," Grace said. "He's 24. His name is Samuel." The room tilted slightly. "He knows about you," Grace continued. "He's known for 2 years. He wanted to find you. I asked him to wait until you found me first." Irene pressed her hand flat against the table to feel something solid. A brother. Somewhere in the world this whole time. A brother.
Some people feel familiar before you even know why. They met at a small cafe. Irene arrived first, sat facing the door. When Samuel walked in, she understood immediately why Grace had been nervous. He had Irene's eyes. Not similar, not close, the same. He stopped when he saw her, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Then he smiled, a slow, uncertain smile, and said, "I used to wonder if I imagined you." Irene felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been lodged there for months quietly came loose. "Me too," she said. They sat for 3 hours. They talked like people who had known each other in another life and were simply catching up.
She wasn't weak. She was trapped. There's a difference. Over tea, Grace finally told them everything. She had been young, alone, in a city where she knew almost no one. When Irene was born, she had no money, no support, no family willing to help. The woman who would become Irene's mother, a distant cousin, had offered to take the baby. Temporarily, she had said. Temporarily became permanently. And by the time Grace had found her footing, the legal papers had been signed and the door had been closed. "I tried to fight it," Grace said quietly. "For 2 years I tried, but I had nothing, and she had everything." She looked at Irene directly. "I never chose to leave you. I want you to know that. I was removed from your life by people who thought they knew better." Irene sat with that for a long time. "Did you ever stop trying?" she asked. "No," Grace said simply. "I just eventually had to accept that trying was hurting you more than it was helping." That answer didn't fix everything, but it filled something in.
Sometimes love isn't enough, and knowing that is its own kind of maturity. David came to her apartment one last time, not to fight, not to beg. He sat across from her and said, "I know what you're going to say." "Then I don't need to say it," Irene replied gently. He nodded slowly. "I love you," he said. "I want you to know that was always real." "I know," she said, "and I love you, but I've spent this entire year finding out who I actually am, and I can't build a future with someone who, even once, even out of love, decided what I could handle." He didn't argue. That told her everything. A man who truly understood would have pushed back, would have said she was wrong. Instead, he sat quietly, because somewhere inside him he knew she was right. He stood to leave. At the door, he paused. "Will you be okay?" Irene looked at him. This man she had loved. This man who had failed her gently. This man who had also tried. And she felt something rare. Gratitude without bitterness. "Yes," she said honestly. "For the first time in a long time, I think I actually will be." He left. She closed the door. No tears this time. Just quiet.
The most complicated love is the love that hurts you and held you at the same time. She went home. Her mother was in the kitchen, same as always. Irene sat down at the table where she had eaten 1,000 meals, done homework, cried over boys, been told she was loved. "I've been angry," Irene said. "I know," her mother replied without turning around. "I'm still angry. I know that too." Irene looked at the back of this woman, this complicated, flawed, fiercely loving woman. "But you are my mother," Irene said quietly. "Whatever else is true, you are my mother, and I don't know how to throw that away." Her mother turned around then. Her eyes were red. She crossed the kitchen and held Irene the way she had when Irene was small. And Irene, who had been so strong for so long, finally let herself cry. Not for what was lost, for everything that was real, even inside the lie.
Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else. It's a weight you put down for yourself. Irene didn't call Zara. She showed up. Zara opened the door looking like someone braced for a verdict. "I'm not here to forgive you today," Irene said calmly. "And I'm not here to cut you off either." Zara waited. "I'm here to tell you that I understand now where your pain came from. You were told a secret that wasn't yours to carry, and it rotted inside you. That's not nothing." Zara's eyes filled. "But what you did with that pain," Irene continued, "was aim it at me. And I need you to sit with that. Really sit with it. Not apologize quickly so we can move on. Actually sit with it." "I'm sorry," Zara whispered. "I know," Irene said. "But sorry is just the beginning, not the end." She turned to leave. "Irene." She looked back. "Are we going to be okay?" Zara asked. Irene considered it honestly. "I don't know yet," she said. "But I'm not gone. That has to be enough for now." She didn't come out of this unbroken. She came out of it awake. 3 months later. Irene sat on a bench outside a cafe in a city she had never visited before. Samuel was inside ordering coffee. Grace was parking the car. She looked out at the street, strangers walking past, living their ordinary lives, and she thought about the woman she had been at the beginning of this story. Certain of her family, certain of her love, certain of her place in the world. All of it had cracked open. And in the breaking, something unexpected had happened. She had found a brother she didn't know she needed. She had found a mother who had never stopped looking for her. She had found the edges of what she would and wouldn't accept. And she had found, underneath all the rubble of everything she thought she knew, herself. Solid, quiet, unafraid. Samuel came out and handed her a coffee. "You okay?" he asked. She looked at him, this stranger who had her eyes, this family she had only just begun, and smiled. "Yeah," she said simply. And for the first time in the entire story, she meant it completely.
This story was never about betrayal. It was about a woman who lost everything she thought she was and found out that underneath all of it, she was more than enough. To everyone who watched all 4 parts, thank you for being here for Irene's story. Comment your country one last time and tell me which moment hit you the hardest. Follow Us22 Studio because the next story is already coming and it will find you exactly when you need it.